Hello, everybody. My name is Benjamin Day,
And I am Jillian Mason.
and this is Medicare for All, the podcast for everybody who needs healthcare. So, it
Mm-hmm.
is going to be our last episode of 2023, Jillian.
Oh,
Goodbye, 2023.
yeah.
Goodbye, our wonderful podcast listeners from this past year. We've almost hit 100
No.
episodes, I should say. I think we're on 92 right now.
Wait, but we do, just for the record, if you are listening to the podcast this year, we would like you to listen next year. We're going to have
Yeah,
plenty of great content.
you're allowed to re up. You can re up if you'd
Yeah.
like. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to say goodbye to those folks. We want to say see you again in January.
Exactly. Well, we thought we would close out 2023 strong by doing like a year in review wrap up. So,
Mm-hmm.
2023, this was kind of a hell of a year. All right. So, probably it might not have been the best year we've ever had, Jillian.
Uh,
But on the positive side, we had Barbenheimer, we had
mm,
the Titan submarine implosion. Uh, you're so proud of me for listing that into the good list, Jillian. Uh, we
yeah.
had congressional hearings on UFOs, possibly the one good thing that Republicans did after taking control of the House by like 3 votes.
Amazing. Amazing.
And of course, we had all the Taylor Swift gossip you can possibly handle. And I think a lot of people emptied their life savings to attend that tour. So,
Oh, yeah.
also, very positive outcome. On the negative side, obviously, we had long COVID. We had the deaths of Matthew Perry, Andre Brower, and Twitter,
Mhm.
RIP, Twitter. And obviously, war in Gaza, war in Ukraine, and Kanye West is an anti Semite now. Possibly he has been for a long time. But anyway, overall, it was pretty bad. It was not the greatest year. But what about the very specialized world of American healthcare? How did everyday folks do when it came to getting the care they needed in 2023? And what were the major milestone developments both in the healthcare policy world and also the Medicare for All organizing world? So in
Mhm.
this episode, we're going to break down the highs and lows of healthcare from 2023, from mifepristone access to Medicaid unwinding and everything in between.
Mm,
Here it
love it.
comes.
Love it. Love it. How has this year been for you, Ben? Has it been a good year for you?
I think so. Yeah, it's not a higher. I mean, I got married this year, so that was like really
Hell
exciting. I
yes.
think that kind of made the whole year good. That was a nice summer.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah. Aside from that, but I, I
Yeah.
I liked it. I think I liked it
And you
personally.
bought a house this year too, right?
Last year,
Last year. Last year.
but we continued to endlessly repair it this year.
I do remember that. Yes.
We-
That's great. It's been a year. It's been a year.
you bought a house in 2023.
I did,
Yes.
and I wasn't fishing for that, but I did. It was awesome.
It's actually right behind you as we speak.
And it's right behind me. Yes, look forward to a changing background in 2024.
Mhm.
So yes. So all right, lots of shit, right? And we want to go through, we want to talk about the good, we want to talk about the bad, right? But I just for my mental health, we have to end on a positive note.
Yeah.
So let's
Yeah.
let's go through the bad
I'm
shit
with you. I'm
first.
with you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. So all right. Ben, what were some of the worst developments in American healthcare this year?
All right. So I thought where we would start would just be looking at access to healthcare in 2023. Now, it's not like huge changes happened in the healthcare system in 2023. Insurance coverage didn't go
Mm.
down or anything like that. But basically, this inflation continued and got really, really bad in 2023. And I think healthcare is already so expensive and so hard to access that like when inflation started like really squeezing people's budgets, then shit got really bad when it came to access to healthcare.
Mm.
So I thought I'd start with the Commonwealth Fund. Fortunately, has launched this new healthcare affordability survey that I think they're going to do every year, and they released the first one in October, just a couple months ago. And all this survey data is from the middle of 2023. And I've been doing this for almost 20 years now. You'd think I wouldn't be shocked by this stuff, but the findings were actually sounded to me. I mean, we don't have exact comparative data since it's the first year of the survey, but it sounds to me way, way, way worse than normal. So I thought I'd start. I would pick out a few of my highlights, and then Jillian, you can share some of your kind of highlights / lowlights from the
Sure,
report.
sure.
But the really big picture finding from the Commonwealth Fund was that half of adults said that it was very or somewhat difficult to afford their healthcare costs. Basically, couldn't afford the healthcare that they need.
You know, one thing that's interesting is like we use the expression "how the other half lives"
Right.
every once in a while or whatever.
Very literal.
But yeah, you know, I just want to mention that there have been points in our country's history where it has not actually been that half of the people in this country were fucking, you know, struggling to afford their healthcare costs.
Yes, and this is
huge.
it's horrifying, but it's also like that's the half of the country that's the potential Medicare for All organizing base. So
That's right.
we really have no excuses for not identifying folks and growing the movement, because plenty of people are getting screwed over. And my impression is that the healthcare crisis kind of started mostly, it still disproportionately impacts low-income people, communities of color, people with disabilities and chronic illnesses, but it is working, the crisis is working its way up well into the middle class and into the kind of more folks who identify as a little more privileged, you know? So it's starting to hit more and more of the country. So anyway, starting from there, half of people can't afford healthcare. Now, 2/3 of adults said that price inflation this past year affected their family's ability to afford healthcare. So there's kind of what I suspected was going on that's how people link it in their minds as well. And then they said nearly 2 of 5 adults reported delaying or skipping needed care or a prescription drug in the last year because they couldn't afford it. 2 of 5, that's 40% of the adult population. Yeah. And I won't, I'll kind of leave it there, but there was also quite a few people who reported they were spending 25% or more of their monthly budget on healthcare. That was nearly a quarter of people who have to like buy their own insurance plan, don't get it through their employer. But that also applied to low income people who are getting it through their employer, still reported spending a huge chunk of them spending 25% or more of their entire budget on healthcare, which is just wild. But we know how expensive healthcare is, and especially if you're working minimum wage, then it's, you know, it's totally unaffordable. So
yeah,
I don't know.
absolutely.
Did you have any big takeaways from this report that were kind of building on those, Jillian?
I mean, honestly, just a super glum, and I was interested a lot in the statistics on debt, because of course, you know, when things start to when people are having an even harder time affording healthcare than they usually do, right? You know that debt's going to go up.
Right. Yeah.
So at this point, you know, nearly 1/3 of working age adults reported having medical or dental debt that they were paying off over time.
Well, you're not alone, everyone out there who has medical debt.
Solidarity.
1/3 of the population.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? And that's if you're sitting at home and you're thinking, you're feeling a little embarrassed, right? Like, oh, you know, like I should be doing better. I should be making more money so I can afford better healthcare, or I shouldn't have these healthcare debts. I should be more responsible with your money. Screw it. You know, if 1/3 of people have debt, right, this is no longer your personal problem. This is a systemic issue, right? And of those people, right, so like 85% of adults who have medical or dental debt reported that it was $500 or more. And we all
pocket change.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we all know the statistic that, you know, working families have less than $500
right
at any given moment. And half of those said that the debt was for expenses that are associated with treatment of an ongoing health condition. Right. That to me, like, that says something, right? Because this isn't just about like one emergency, one crisis or whatever. This is like, this is the debt that you're going to be accumulating for the rest of your fucking life.
That's like taking on debt to just manage your diabetes, or to, you know, manage your asthma care, you know,
or your mental health care, right?
Exactly. Physical therapy.
Yeah, like when we do these things, it's like, you know, I honestly, like, I feel like I wouldn't be alive if it weren't for like my mental health meds, or you know, sometimes at different points my gastrointestinal meds or whatever. All of that stuff, you know, it's like that's just the price of staying alive.
Yeah.
Hey-o. I mean, and then we know, right, of course, that when these two things happen, that people have a lot of debt and people are having a hard time affording their costs in the present moment, right, that they end up avoiding actually seeking care, like you started to talk about.
Yeah. And this is the last piece that I would toss in here. I already mentioned how many people were delaying and skipping care because they couldn't afford it. That's I think 2 of 5, so 40% of people are avoiding skipping care. And of those who are avoiding or skipping care or prescriptions, more than half of them said that when they did delay or skip care because of costs, a health problem got worse as a result. So, really profound impacts of this. And this is, again, 2023, year of our Lord. And this is where we've arrived.
Who's Lord, Ben?
Yeah. That's heavily up for debate at this point. So, yeah.
Damn. And then people are actually dropping their health insurance altogether, right?
Yeah. They said 5% of people dropped their health insurance in the last year because they couldn't afford it. And 16%, an additional 16% are considering dropping their coverage just because it's so expensive. So.
And dropping your insurance is a gateway drug to medical debt.
Yes.
Oh, good times.
And most people like a good gateway drug, but not in this case.
Yeah, I do. I usually approve of the gateway drug. But let's see. So, all right. So we've talked a little bit now about the state of healthcare in America, which is terrible. And we did have some more bad developments to talk about this year. Some more shitty things that happened.
It's going to be hard to get through this first half of this podcast, isn't it? I'm realizing you really organized this poorly.
But I'm telling you, we're going to feel really good by the end of it. All right. So I promise you that this is going to be a journey ultimately towards joy and wellness. All right. But so one of the negative things that we definitely have to mention here is something that we've done a podcast episode on before, which is the end of the COVID emergency. And I'll put that in quotes, the quote unquote end of
the
emergency.
Right. I thought you were going to put COVID emergency in quotes, and I was going to have to talk with
you. Wouldn't that be funny if after 2 years of working with you and 15 years of being friends with you, all of a sudden you found out that I was like an anti-vaxxer, and you found out here on this podcast?
Well, actually, one of our earliest volunteer audio editors was a COVID denier. We found out as COVID struck, and we're like, oh, well, this relationship has become really awkward really fast.
Oh my. Well, no. So I'm putting my quotes around the end part of the COVID emergency.
It's an audio medium. We really have to be careful.
I do acknowledge that there was a COVID emergency. And in fact, I would suggest that perhaps for a lot of people, it's still continuing.
Yeah.
We have a lot of friends. We hear from people every day with the long COVID. And not to mention that, right, we have the, people who are just still recovering from the economic effects of being sick from COVID or having family members sick or losing family members to COVID. So again, I would question whether the emergency is over, but we do know that back in April, Joe Biden announced, Uncle Joe told us that everything was fine. And one of the crazy things that this led to was Medicaid, what he called Medicaid unwinding, which is like the euphemism of the year, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
And so, basically what this meant was that we know that during the pandemic, people were auto-renewed for Medicaid, right, without having their eligibility checked. But they started rigorously checking people's eligibility this year. And the problem with that is that we know that a large percentage of those people, a significant percentage of those people, are actually going to be losing their coverage, not because they're not ineligible, but because of what they call administrative churn.
Right.
And this all went up to the states, so it ended up being a thing where, Republican governors made this a punitive thing for poor people in their state.
Make it as hard as possible to get your renewal and eligibility.
Yeah. So, and the stat that I have on this that I think is insane, right, is so as of November, right, so this doesn't even include the second half of November and December, about 9 million people had lost coverage.
Holy shit.
And to give you an idea of the percentages, that's 1 out of 10 Medicaid recipients lost their health care coverage this year.
Right. And Medicaid covers a huge portion of just the whole country. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And just because I
gotta
like to get my digs in whenever I can, 1.7 million of those people were in Texas alone.
Oh, good job, Texas.
Heyo.
Oh my God.
So big thanks to Greg Abbott. You are getting a giant lump of coal from me this year. Another reason that Greg Abbott will get a lump of coal from me this year, by the way, which is another on our list of negative developments here, are the bans on gender affirming care that went into effect.
Which we also did a podcast on. Yeah.
We certainly did. And I really hope you guys will, if you haven't, I hope you'll go back and listen to that because it was an amazing opportunity to talk with a family in Texas who is being directly affected by that.
Yeah. And we're gonna have to come up with something worse than like a lump of coal for some of these real healthcare villains. I mean, they would be like, "Oh, great! I can burn this as a fossil fuel, right?
Clean coal,
right? Yeah." So I would add. This is another one that I guess we haven't yet done an episode on this, but a lot of news came out in 2023 that. The new AI fad kicked off by ChatGPT was quickly embraced by the health insurance industry to rapidly automate their claims denials. And there was a lot of reporting on especially Medicare Advantage plans doing this, but we also know that pretty much all private insurance plans use AI to review claims. Allegedly, you have a doctor at the insurance company reviewing whether the healthcare you got, you should have got it or not. But they spend, I think, less than 10 seconds per case. So you can be pretty sure that they're not actually reviewing the merits of your case. There's a machine telling them whether they should deny it or not.
10 seconds, eh? 10 seconds.
Yeah. Oh, God. I don't know how you do that job and live with a clean conscience, but
you know, we talked a little bit about AI in healthcare on our last episode, and my sister, who is a nurse, she wanted me to mention to you, Ben. She was like, "You got to tell Ben." And so now I'm just going to do it right here on the podcast.
Right. Yes.
That like AI actually in medicine itself is not necessarily a bad thing, and that actually they've been finding that AI is really useful for things like diagnosis, where it can really help to actually like cut through the bias of the provider or an outdated knowledge from the provider. So I just want to we're not anti-AI. We're anti-insurance AI.
She must have said this because I made AI like the villain of the year or something. The healthcare villain of the year last year.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see positive applications for AI, especially outside of like a profit-driven motive.
Yes. That's such a good point, Ben.
Yeah, but let's also be very careful because I mean we do know AI in some settings is reproducing biases, racial biases, and things like that. But
that's true.
I trust healthcare for the homeless not to fuck up their use of AI. So
absolutely.
All right. Yeah. What else do you have on your naughty list?
Right. Well, so this one actually I think is like kind of a mixed blessing, or like a. I don't know what's the opposite of a mixed blessing, like a mixed punishment. I don't know. Anyway, a mixed curse. So great. The kids have a word for this now. It's like blurst. It's like blessed and cursed all at once. Anyway, so here's the deal. Ben and I were a little worried when we listened to the first Republican debates, right? Because no one was talking about healthcare.
That's right.
And Joe Biden wasn't talking about healthcare. And so no one in the whole election cycle was talking about healthcare. But then came our hero and savior, Donald J. Trump, who injected healthcare into this election for us. And basically what he's saying is sort of the same thing he's always saying, right? Which is he's bringing back the repeal and replace talk, right? He wants to repeal and replace Obamacare, and that he says that will be a priority of the Trump administration. of course, he said this on Truth Social, so I think
Right.
he's speaking in an echo chamber. But and he said, "I don't want to terminate Obamacare. I want to replace it with much better health care." And when I'm shouting here, that's because it's in all caps.
Right.
And then finally, he added in a separate post, "Obamacare sucks."
Well, we can actually agree on that in some extent. I mean, except for
Sure.
obviously Medicaid expansion was great. The subsidies are great, but it was far from good, and the exchange plans do actually suck pretty bad. I'm on one,
Mhm.
so I think I get to say that.
I mean,
But
it's a good
yeah,
policy critique.
yes. But we know that Trump cares so much about this that he will not tell us what he's going to do differently in any level of detail. But I agree with you. It's going to be. I think it'll be better across the board if Trump has any line on healthcare, because it'll push Democrats to have an alternative kind of that they're proposing.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So I want to add one last thing on the down
One
list
final
for
one.
2023, Jillian. Stephanie Nakajima, your
Oh.
predecessor, former director of communications at Healthcare Now, longtime co-host of this very podcast, is
Mhm.
leaving us, leaving the country, leaving the United States. She and her husband are moving to Denmark.
Oh,
So she's been serving as the executive director of MassCare, the Massachusetts group for Medicare for All, doing an amazing job. But she is making the personally very wise decision to get the fuck out of here right now. But it's really terrible for the Medicare for All movement. So Stephanie, we're going to miss you. Hope everything goes smoothly for you, and enjoy that amazing universal healthcare, man.
yeah.
I wish I could get me some of that. I'll visit just to use the healthcare system.
And also to see you, because we
Yeah,
love you, Stephanie.
yeah. It's like my back is hurting a little bit. Do you mind if I come and say hi?
Absolutely. I think that Stephanie can anticipate lots of Americans crashing on her couch for just that reason.
Yes, exactly. Medical tourism straight to Denmark, to the Nakajima household. All
Love
right,
you, girl.
so let's move on to the nice list. Okay, the naughty list, that was a rough one.
Shake it
okay?
off. Shake it off.
Yeah, yep. All
All
right.
right,
So
all right.
this year has not been a total dumpster fire, Jillian. Actually, many exciting, positive things, both on the movement side, the policy side. Let's get into it. As they say in England, let's get stuck into it.
Oh,
wish we
is
had
that what
something
they
like that.
say?
Yeah, let's get
Sounds
stuck into it.
kinda, I don't know. It sounds kind of dirty to me, but I don't know.
They're very
actually,
innocent.
I just have a dirty mind. All right, but you're right. There were some nice things, and we would really want to hammer these because
Yes.
I always say, like, big insurance, the hospitals, the rich people, the Republicans, they have stolen too many of our smiles, right? And so we want to claim them back whenever we can. So we want to celebrate
Grinch who
these
stole
little
smiles.
things. Exactly, yeah. So let's make room for joy. So we have some Medicare for All news that I think was really cool this year. The folks who introduced the Medicare for All bills in the 2023 Senate and House were made some really cool improvements to the bill.
Right.
That
Yeah.
mentioned before, right? Which is
Mhm.
that now abortion access and gender affirming care are included in the Medicare for All bill.
Right.
So
Explicitly. Yeah.
explicitly.
Mhm.
So you should know, if you care about either of those issues or both, hopefully, that you should be for Medicare for All, because passing Medicare for All would be a way to override the state's tyranny on those issues.
Yeah.
Yep.
Possibly the only way to get to public funding of abortion access and transgender care or gender affirming care. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
And then, along with that, we have this big bill introduction, and
Right.
we had
Yep.
along with that, we had this big bill introduction, right?
Mhm.
And we had some serious co-sponsor momentum, right?
Yeah.
Behind that reintroduction, and we had a significant number of legislators who signed on as co-sponsors of Medicare for All.
Yeah, and it was about the same number as we started the previous session with, but people don't understand how hard that is to get to when you lose a bunch of Democrats in the House and the Senate. Usually that means you have a falling number of co-sponsors. But the fact that the movement managed to add a bunch of new people right at the beginning of the session meant that we were able to it took a lot of organizing to get to like hold steady, in a year where Republicans are taking the House. So that was an accomplishment. Another thing that I would mention, we throw back to earlier this year, so every 2 years, the health insurance industry, AHIP, the America's Health Insurance Plans, they basically behind the scenes, they get members of Congress to sign onto this letter, basically saying that Medicare Advantage plans are amazing. There's nothing wrong with them. They're all just fan-freaking-tastic, and we should support them with no limitations and grow them as much as we can. So it's basically like, we call it like the blank check for Medicare Advantage letter. And sadly, this letter every year is signed by tons and tons of Republicans and tons of Democrats, including many Democrats who support Medicare for All, also sign on to the like blank check letter for Medicare Advantage. But this year, the Medicare for All movement really kind of pushed back on that and actually, mobilized to stop senators and reps from signing the letter, and had a lot of success. For the very first time, there's some kind of cracks in the armor for congressional support for Medicare Advantage plans. And we're seeing, I think, the fallout of that throughout the year, just like congressional report after congressional report on problems with Medicare Advantage plans and the unfair denials they're doing and legal investigations.
Massive fraud. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So it's I feel like the movement made a real crack in the armor there, and they did not. So they lost a bunch of signers on the Senate side, and I think they didn't even release a letter for the House side.
Right.
I might be flipping the two, but one of the two chambers, AHIP, didn't even release their letter because they had lost so many signers and it would look really bad. So nice organizing work on that one. That's really important for protecting Medicare from privatization. So
love that. I also just want to say we've got Torrential Rage, who is one. I love that name. Torrential Rage is one of our super fans on YouTube who's listening right now. Say hi, and I would like to say hi back. I always love your comments on our videos. But so one thing that happened this year, like I think, like not to brag or anything, but like Ben and we did some pretty good work at Healthcare Now this year. One that hopefully will help to advance our movement. We launched our Voices of U.S. Healthcare project, which is a excuse me. Which is a publicly searchable database of patient and provider testimony about the human cost of our healthcare system. So these are stories from ordinary people all over the country, just talking about the struggles that they've had trying to access healthcare in this country, and also from doctors and nurses and other medical providers who have experienced that as well, and have seen that firsthand. And so, we really believe that storytelling is the way forward for our movement, right? We want people to understand that these aren't just systemic political issues. These are issues that are like hurting our hearts, and hurting our families and hurting our communities. And we really would want to make that clear. And we know that when people get out in the streets and start telling their healthcare stories, that's when we actually start to make change in the healthcare system in this country.
Yeah. And if you think back on any social movement that has won in the United States, you probably think of people who are directly impacted by the issue, speaking out personally, giving their own personal testimony, leading those movements. So we're not going to be any different. Medicare for All has to be led by the folks who are being directly impacted. So this project was kind of part of that. Another thing we did this last year, we launched kind of a new training and workshop series. This is also like a movement building effort, trying to give, a lot of folks get impacted by the healthcare system. They get pissed off. They want to do something to make Medicare for All happen, but they might not identify as an activist, might not know, like, how do you go about doing this? How do you win a giant movement where you're going up against a lot of money? How do you envision that? What's the pathway? And like, what can I do? Some people might think that they don't have the skills that they need. In fact, anyone can become an activist. You all have all the skills you need to do this. But we offer this series of trainings on. We have 4 workshops on organizing skills. We have one on telling your healthcare story. We have like a 101 on healthcare policy, like how the healthcare system works, how it's broken, and how Medicare for All would fix it. You, again, don't need to be an expert in anything to go through that. We have one on racial equity in Medicare for All, one on reproductive justice and Medicare for All. And I think we've trained almost 800 people in this first year when we rolled out these workshops. So we're going to carry that on next year. And this is just kind of how we're going to grow the movement one new activist at a time. So that's exciting.
Hell yes. Hell yes. Thank you to all of our listeners for allowing us to toot our own horn for a moment.
Yes. And I really love those trainings. I don't know if you felt the same way, but the interactions we had, just the folks we got to know through those trainings and the work they're doing on the ground is like really inspiring. So,
and like meeting random people from TikTok and just like getting to know people and really helping them to develop as activists has been really good. So we're going to keep doing that in 2024. That's not over. And then I feel like I had a couple of other good things that happened this year other than us. But I got really distracted by us.
Oh, yeah.
What else? What else did we do? So we had a really long episode on this with Alex Lawson from Social Security Works. But this is the first year of negotiating drug prices for Medicare, right? The Biden administration was able this year to actually negotiate drug prices for Medicare recipients. And so hopefully next year, the following year, you're going to start, if you're on Medicare and you're taking certain drugs, you'll see your drug prices go down because, when you negotiate, prices go down. Just feels so basic.
You really summed it up there, Jillian. Yeah. No, we fought really hard on this one last year, and it's only 10 drugs to start with, but these are like the 10 drugs that represent a huge chunk of Medicare's spending on prescription drugs. So it's a bigger deal than it sounds like. And then they add more drugs in next year. So maybe this will be the highlight of 2024 also. It'll be like another 10 drugs were negotiated.
I'm starting the Google Doc with our notes for next year's
exactly
right now. So that's awesome. And then the one thing that I just kind of wanted to mention a little bit, like as a person with a uterus.
Nice segue.
Yeah, good work. So as a person with a uterus, one thing that interested me is that this is the first full year that we haven't had our reproductive rights since in my lifetime, actually. And so, of course, the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade in 2022. And that made it possible for all of these states to make abortion illegal, including my own home of Texas. And it also created this like interesting wave of people in people in red states trying to, particularly those with like hard right governors, trying to kind of spread abortion bans throughout the country, even to people who are not living in their states. And that to me, I think is super dangerous. And so one of the ways that was happening is this mifepristone case. Yeah, this is like the very conservative Fifth Circuit Court in Texas. Hey. But basically, justice there tried to ban mifepristone nationally. But the United States Supreme Court actually stayed their ruling, right? So the justice, he basically said mifepristone should never have been approved. I'm sorry, I should backtrack. Mifepristone is known as one of the abortion pills, right? It's like a medical abortion pill. It's an important component if you want to have a medical abortion. So anyway, the justice said basically mifepristone never should have been approved by the FDA in 2003 or whenever it was approved, right? And so therefore, we should have a case to see whether it should be taken off the market now. But in the meantime, we should ban mifepristone nationally, right? Because they're challenging the entire FDA authorization of the drug, right? So, but the Supreme Court, right, the same people who took away Roe versus Wade, right, who overturned that ruling in 2022, they actually stayed the lower court ruling, which means that they said, no, you actually can't ban mifepristone nationally until there's been some kind of a hearing here. And basically, they just announced that they're going to be actually hearing the actual case soon. The reason that I think this is significant is because, you know, while it sucks to have the shittiest Supreme Court in recent memory playing with my lady bits again, it does seem like maybe this time they're sort of seeing that they have overstepped.
That sounded much more pleasant than it probably is.
Playing with my lady bits. Oh, well, I mean, come on. It would be pleasant. It's pleasant depending on the person. You know?
It's true.
If you got Idris Elba playing with you, that's awesome. But if you have Brett Kavanaugh playing with you,
no, not so much.
That's assault.
Yep.
So yeah, anyway, long story short, it does seem like the Supreme Court may possibly be backtracking on, or at least feeling the backlash from activists and from women outraged all over this country about reproductive rights. And I think that that's a sign that our movement is gaining some ground.
Yeah, they've got one more chance to fuck this up, but they better not, because then the revolution, I think. So, all right, so we went through and that was kind of a mix of bad and good, but I guess it was mostly the stay is the victory there.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the stay part is great.
Yeah, so we went through some bad shit 2023. We went through some real victories, some progress in 2023. Jillian, how would you rate 2023 in terms of, you know, just like how much progress we've made towards healthcare justice in general?
Yeesh.
Not to put you on the spot or anything, but
you know what's fucked up is that I wrote this question and I don't have an answer. All right, you know what? I am really jazzed about this Medicare price negotiation stuff. Like really, really jazzed about that.
Right.
That feels important to me. So that feels like a big shift. So I would give the year a 5, I think, just in terms of that.
That's fair. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't, I think I'm with you with the 5 out of 10.
Yeah, it's 5 out of 10.
Yes. As opposed to like 5 out of 100.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a year where healthcare was really on the table that much, you know, in terms, there's not many opportunities for congressional anything, right? Not for good or for evil. Divided Congress, all that. So a lot of the stuff we're talking about happened like, you know, through the courts, through executive order, or implementing stuff that already happened a year or 2 ago. But I agree with you. I think the Medicare prescription negotiation stuff, that is really the first time Congress and Democrats, I'm going to say, were willing to take on Big Pharma.
Yeah.
First time really in living memory for me. And that you're going to need that to win Medicare for all, right? You're going to have to take them on. And also the Medicare Advantage stuff is kind of like the first time I can think of where, and we're not quite there yet, but we're getting closer to Democrats again in Congress sort of being willing to push back and take on the insurance industry a bit. So I think in terms of like moving Congress along, and especially moving the Democratic Party along, there were some promising signs there. But it wasn't like the most amazing year ever where we won all sorts of shit, not as much as we would like to. So I think landing in the middle is good, but there's some signs for optimism there. And I think people did really good organizing work that led to all those steps that we're talking about.
Hell yes. Big shout out to our friends at the Physicians for National Health Program, who worked a lot on the Medicare Advantage stuff, along with Be a Hero. And shout out to our friends at Public Citizen, who are working on Medicare for All resolutions all over the country. And shout out to our friends at People's Action, who are challenging insurance denials all over the country as well. We're building this movement. It's happening.
National Nurses United is doing the Patients Over Profits Pledge campaign that we're
Oh
doing
my
with
God, of
them.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's been a good
Um,
year for organizing, despite the what I like about the Medicare for All movement is like, even when there's like not a huge like organizing opportunity, like, oh, we can get this through Congress now. People find ways to do the important like base building work and movement building work that we need to be doing. So
yeah,
hat
yeah.
tip to you, to Medicare for All movement.
Heyo. Yeah. Mel King always used to say that you have to go slow to go fast, right? You have to take the time to actually build relationships and build strength and a movement, build trust with each other.
Yeah.
And that's when we're able to respond when there's one of these flashpoints. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all good. And then, so, okay, one final question here, because, it is that time of year for resolutions.
Oh God, I dread this time of year every year.
What are our New Year's resolutions for the Medicare for All movement?
Huh. Okay, I think I like this because it's not a resolution for my own betterment.
No, honey,
Those are the
don't
kinds of
worry.
resolutions I really don't like.
I'm not going to make you tell me how many steps you're going to take.
All right, good. Yeah, this is a replacement, I think, for self improvement or betterment of any sort. All right, so this is where I'm going to go with my resolution, Jillian. So 2024, as we all know, is going to be big election year, right? So I think I think our resolution for the Medicare for All movement, and again, we don't need to get everything shouldn't be swept up in the election cycle. We need to continue doing the base building and social movement building work. But when it comes to the election cycle, our fear all along, like you mentioned earlier in the podcast, has been healthcare just kind of taking a backseat because neither Trump nor Biden gives a shit about prioritizing any healthcare action for 2025 and beyond. So I think our resolution should be to not let them sweep healthcare under the carpet, because we know it is basically the number one issue for most Americans and most business owners and most everyone's. So I think we have to force it back on the agenda, especially when you're looking down ballot at people who are running for Congress, who maybe have a primary challenger, people running for state legislatures. I think there's going to be real opening there to force the issue on Medicare for All. So I think we should resolve to elevate the profile of healthcare, whether people want to or not.
I'm with you. Yeah. I'm with you. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good one. I would say that my resolution for the Medicare for All movement is I think this year we should all make a conscious effort, and maybe this isn't just within the Medicare for All movement. Maybe this is within all good people who support social justice. I think we need to be better at humaning, Ben. I just think that this year we should really resolve to give each other more grace, to be kinder to each other, even people who disagree with us, and to really reach out and have the kind of intimate, important conversations that it actually takes to do this work. Let's not take each other down. Let's and you know who you are. Let's not take each other down. Let's take down the big insurance CEOs and the hospital profiteers and all those motherfuckers.
Does this mean we're going to see a kinder, gentler Jillian in 2024?
Yo, that was the hippiest shit I've ever said in my life.
I really didn't see that one coming. I did not see it coming.
Yeah. No. Usually my New Year's resolution is to burn something down.
Fuck shit up. Yeah.
No, this year I think we should just be a little more chill, a little bit more cool with each other.
Yeah, I think that's probably, especially given all the horrifying shit we started at the beginning of the podcast, how difficult it is for people out there.
Yeah.
I agree with that. That's a good one. All right. On that unexpectedly hippy dippy note and positive note, thank you so much, everyone, for listening to the podcast this past year. We really, really enjoyed making the content for you. Also, talking with you, hearing your questions during the mailbags. And we're really excited to keep it going next year. And if you have any suggestions for topics you'd like us to cover, feel free to shoot us an email. I want to thank the podcast team, without whom we could not make any one of these episodes. Our podcast manager is Angelique Davis. Our show notes writer was Jerry Katz. And our audio editor for this episode was Christian Brandt. So don't forget to like the episode, subscribe to the Medicare for All podcast. And this podcast is a project of the Healthcare Now Education Fund.
You know, Ben, I just thought maybe a good New Year's resolution for our listeners would be to help us to grow this podcast by maybe inviting a friend to listen, or I believe you're about to tell them another way that they can support our board.
Yeah, I think they shouldn't just resolve it. I think they should just do it. Just share it. And if you want to support the Healthcare Education Fund and keep the podcast going, you can donate on our website at healthcare-now.org. And this is a special moment just at this moment for the end of the year, because our friends and allies at the United Steelworkers Union have given us a generous matching gift. So every dollar you give between now and the end of the year is going to be matched and doubled. So if you can give $50, it becomes $100. If you can give $100, it becomes $200. So please, before the end of the year, make your way to the website and chip in. Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Stay safe and stay dangerous.